Hello, everybody. First of all, thank you very much that you came today. This topic is quite important for me, and I really appreciate that you are here today. And a couple of words about me. I'm working for a small company called Robotize, and we are based in Munich, Germany, and we are making robots, real physical robots for hotels. And if at some point you're staying in one of the hotels, our robots are already working, and you want to order something from room service, our robots, our minibar robots will definitely bring it to you, and this is awesome. And besides front-end development, I'm very interested in a web accessibility topic, and this is something we are going to talk about today. In my career, I was able to prepare several projects for AA accessibility requirements test. And that's why I think I know a little bit about this topic, and today I would like to share my experience with you. If during the presentation you will have some questions, at the end of the presentation I hope you'll have a chance to ask, or if you don't want to ask publicly, just feel free to come to me. I will be somewhere around this room staying, and if you have some questions, just come and ask privately. It's okay. And we will start today by looking at this picture. If I would ask you to describe this picture only in one word, what would be your answer? Any ideas? Evolution could be yes. Any other options? Wheel, yeah, for sure wheel. I would say several ones, but for me personally, this picture means a progress, something that constantly improving during the time, often by people's actions. And actually, progress is something that allowed us to be here today. Look at this nice computer, these monitors, etc. All of these things are results of the progress, and this is super nice. But let's go a little bit further and think what can be a reason for progress? What forces or encourages people to making things better? And what are the triggers to say for progress? For me personally, one of the main triggers for progress is the question, what if? When people ask you this question, they are trying to look at the problem from different points of view, collect some information and find some problems maybe and fix them. And this question opens a room for experiment, for creativity, etc. And if you ask me now, why do we need this information today, I will tell you, because we are developers. And we are making websites this way or another way, and we are making web interfaces, or at least some of us. And of course, we want our interfaces to be good, and if they're not that good, we want them to be better. So we will use this question today. We will take a look at several quite common components. Probably all of us have built these components at least once or two times in the career. And we will take a look at several components and ask this question, pretend that we are different users, look at the components from different points of view, find some problems, and finally fix those. And we will start from taking a look at a component called to-do list. Super simple component, it does several things. So first thing it does, it allows us to create this to-do list so we can add new items. For example, now I'm speaking at the conference, why not to add an item about that? Speak at Øredev, and then I click add button, and now this component, this new to-do item moves to the end of a to-do list, and this is how this widget works. Also, we can mark some items as done, or even we can delete these items, and in the first look, this component is already done, and we can even put it to production somehow, or do whatever we want with that. So for us, it's done, but not everything is that simple, so wait a little bit. We will try to find some problems in this component, and we will ask our question. So what if users who will use this component are blind people? What's now? How would they use this component? How would be that component convenient for blind people? If you think that nobody will, from blind user or visual impaired user, will visit your site, you're a little bit wrong, because in the world there are millions and millions of people who are either blind or who have some kind of visual impairments, and we as developers need to consider them as our users because they are our users, and we need to make sure that the websites we are building are accessible for them as well. And here is our component, and we are pretending to be blind users. So we are asking the question, what if we are blind users? In order to test these components from the point of view of a blind user, we need to know how blind users are actually using internet, using web. And they are using it differently from us. They don't look at the screen. So for this test, I don't need a screen, so let's turn it off. And they use keyboard a lot and a special software called a screen reader. So now, in order to test this component, I will start my screen reader, which is already installed on macOS and called
VoiceOver item visit Mamo Museum
and called VoiceOver. And now I will try to test this component to try to use it. So first of all, I need to find this component on the page, and according to statistics, most of screen reader users, they navigate through the pages using headlines. So I need to find a headline of this component.
Heading level 2, to-do list.
So now I found it, and now I know that there is something called to-do list on the page, and now I need to explore what it is. And for exploring screen reader users, again, according to statistics, they can use several techniques, and one of them is by navigating through the interactive elements. For example, we can do it with the tab key. So now I will start clicking tab key, and we will see what screen reader will pronounce to us.
Unticked checkbox lists 3 items.
So it said something, but let's take a look what screen reader pronounced. Unticked tick box lists 3 items. So this is several pieces of information. So first of all, it's tick box, which for us means checkbox. Unticked means unchecked, and then 3 items. Probably there are some more checkboxes on this page, or at least it seems so. Let's continue clicking.
Button.
Just a button. And neither the first interactive element nor this one doesn't tell what this checkbox or this button does, so no information about that. So if I would be a screen reader user, I would never click at this button or that checkbox because you don't know what will happen after that, so we need to be sure what we are doing, right? So let's continue clicking.
Unticked tick box.
Tick box again, which is good, but it doesn't tell us any information what this tick box about.
Button.
Etc. So
VoiceOver off.
Definitely there are some problems for blind people here, and now we need to solve these problems. And actually this problem is super simple to solve. We need to add some labels to interactive elements, and there are 2 common ways of doing that. By using label HTML tag and putting some text inside of that, and then connecting this label with the interactive element. In this case is a checkbox, or we can use area label attribute and add descriptions exactly to the value of this element. So now this is the same to-do list but a little bit improved. So now let's test it again. Starting screen reader.
VoiceOver on Chrome.
Navigating to the to-do list.
Heading level 2, to-do list.
And now I will start clicking the tab key.
Visit Mamo Museum, visit Mamo Museum. Unticked checkbox lists 3 items.
More information. This information is about exact items. So now we know that there is a to-do list and it has at least this item, and now I will continue clicking.
Delete item, visit Mamo Museum. Button.
So now I know what this button does, because this button will delete this item. I can continue clicking.
C Street Peter's Church, C Street Peter's Church. Unticked tick box.
And you can see that some text is duplicated. It's not a problem, or I would say not a big problem, because screen readers, they are like browsers. They are different. Different screen readers will pronounce different text. But at least 2 times repeated text is much better than nothing, right?
Delete item, C Street Peter's Church. Button.
So now
VoiceOver off.
screen reader users will understand that this is a to-do list, and they will have some information about what these interactive elements do. And this is already nice, and this already makes our to-do list somehow accessible. But I didn't tell you one thing. This to-do list does one more thing. So let's say, speaking at the conference, and this moment is more important for me than see some sightseeing here in Malmo. So let's put it to the first place. Let's do a priority, or in other words, let's sort to-do items. And we can do that easily. So look, when I hover this to-do list, there is a small element which contains 6 vertically aligned buttons, which in the UX or UI world often means drag and drop. So I can drag this element, move it to the top, and then can release this element. And now this item is in the first position. And this is super nice because it gives some value to our to-do list. But now, let's imagine if we are a blind user, how would we use this drag and drop pattern? How would we use a mouse, which we don't use and never used because screen reader users don't need mouse? how would I use the mouse and find an element on the screen which I don't see, and then move this element to the position I don't even know, either to the top or to the bottom? I don't know anything about how it looks. I know how it sounds, but for us, as screen reader users, there is no way to do this sorting, because this drag and drop pattern is super nice when you see the screen, but it's quite useless if you don't see the screen. And this problem is a little bit bigger than labels, but even this problem is solvable. I did it a couple of times in a few different ways, so now I will present you one of them. And luckily, we have a couple of tools for testing, for fixing this drag and drop pattern. First tool called JS, and the second tool called CS. And I'm pretty sure you know what JS stands for, right? It's a JavaScript, but what does the CS stands for? Any ideas? Right. This is a common sense. So we will use our common sense, imagination, creativity, whatever you call it, plus a little bit JavaScript knowledge, and we will solve this problem. And I will not tell you how we will solve this problem. I will show you the end result, and you will understand how it works now.
Voiceover on Chrome. Item.
Same component, navigating to the headline.
Heading level 2. To-do list.
And now I will start clicking Tab key, and now please attention, see what happens.
List 3 items. Press Enter to choose item. Visit Mambo Museum. Group.
So what happened now? First of all, we see there's one more interactive element in the component, and this component is exactly the same component we use for dragging. So we made it focusable, and we added some instructions for screen reader users. Now instruction says, please press Enter in order to select this element. But we actually don't need this element, right? We want to move last item to the first position. So now I will quickly click to the last element.
Visit Mambo Museum. Delete item. Visit Mambo. Press Enter to C Street Peter's Church. Delete item. C Street Peter. Press Enter to choose item. Speak at Øredev. Group.
So now I focused on this element, and now instruction says me that I need to click Enter in order to select this element. Let's do that.
Item speak at Øredev selected. Use keys up and down for moving through the list. Use escape key to deselect the item.
And once I clicked Enter, screen reader, first of all, we selected this element, and now visually it even also highlighted, so it's okay for both screen reader users and users who see the screen. And now screen reader pronounced us some more instructions. So in order to move this element through the list, I can use arrow up and arrow down keys, and in order to deselect this element, I can use escape. But let's move this element to the up.
Item speak at Øredev move to position 2. Item speak at Øredev move to position 1.
So now we moved item we need to the position 1. Now let's click escape to deselect this element.
Item speak at Øredev deselected. You are currently on a group. Voiceover off.
And that's how it works. A little bit of creativity, some JavaScript, and the problem is solved. So screen reader users, they don't drag and drop elements. They just use different technique in order to manipulate, because the goal is not to drag an element. The goal is to sort the elements, and now we solve that problem, which is super nice. And this was all about to-do list. Let's go to the next component. And the next component will be a chart. What are charts actually? It's one of the ways how to visualize the data, and this tool is super powerful because with charts we can not only see the data itself, we can understand some dynamics, for example trends, or I don't know if it's good dynamic or bad dynamic, or if our revenue, for example, increases or decreases, etc. This is super convenient. But the problem is it's only convenient for those people who see the screen, but we are pretending to be a screen reader user. So now we need to solve another problem. Now we need to make a chart accessible for blind people, which is not a trivial thing. Can you please raise the hands who have worked with charts at least one time? Many of you, and probably you know, if you worked with the charts, you know even to display a chart on the page is not a trivial thing. But if you are coming to accessibility, it's getting much bigger. Problem is getting much more bigger, and now we need to solve that. And I will show you how I solve this problem. I will show you two ways of solving this problem. So first way is more related with, to small charts like this one. So I will start screen reader and I will show you how it works, and you will understand what I did.
Voiceover on Chrome.
So now screen reader is on, and now I will continue clicking a tab key.
Apples, 3 kilograms sold on July 1st, group, application. Bananas, 3 kilograms sold on July 1st, group. Oranges, 1 kilogram sold on July 1st, group.
So what we did, we made all the chart bars focusable, and we added some unique descriptions to each of them.
VoiceOver off.
So screen reader can pronounce all this information once this or another element is focusable. Problem is solved in a super simple way. We made a chart bar. All chart bars we need focusable with the top index attribute, and then we added a unique description to each item with the area label. And this technique looks pretty similar to the technique we already covered in to-do list. So this is super simple. At least this way should be done in 100% of cases because we made super inaccessible charts somehow accessible. There are some problems, and we discuss about those problems just in a second. Now look at this chart. It looks almost the same like a previous one, but there is a big difference here. Amount of clickable and focusable elements in this chart is 35, but to be honest, this is not the biggest chart. Let's imagine that we want to display huge amount of data for a year or for, I don't know, 2 years in one page, in one view. So amount of tabbable and focusable items could be like hundreds, and this is super bad because there is no way that one person will click through all the charts. So at some point, users will simply ignore this chart, and this is a problem. So now the problem is this chart is accessible, of course, already because we added descriptions to each bar chart, but now we need to make it convenient to use for screen reader users. Let's use our tool, which already used common sense and a little bit of creativity, and think what we can do. So what is our goal, actually? Not to display a chart for sure, because charts is only one way to display data, and if this way doesn't work for us for some reason, we can find another way of displaying data for end users. And the most trivial one is to use a data table. So the second technique is about to display a chart, as we did previously, and hide it, totally hide it for screen reader users. So only people who see the screen, physically see the screen, will see the chart, and those people who use screen reader will not even know that this chart exists, but instead, for those people who use screen reader, we will display a data table and hide it visually from the DOM tree, so this element is gonna be invisible. So this is the end result, but there are two elements here. This chart, which we already saw in this on the screen, and in addition to this chart, there is a table, and screen reader users will use the table, so they will not know about this chart, but it's not a problem because our goal was to deliver some data to the end users, and this goal is achieved. So now this chart is accessible for blind people, which is super nice. Let's go to the next element. Radio group, super simple element with a minimum of HTML and a little bit of JavaScript. So with this radio group component, we can just choose a color, one of three, red, green, or blue, and this is super simple. But even though if this component is simple, there are some problems here. So now let's return to our question and ask ourselves, what if our users who will use this radio group have some kind of limited motor skills? And what do I mean by limited motor skills? It can be many options. So look at my hand. It's not that big, not that small, but even with this hand, when it comes to click an element on the small touchable screen like iPhone 5, for example, sometimes I'm having some problems because I cannot easily click elements. Or can you imagine a person who is trying to order a taxi in the winter time outside using gloves, touchable gloves, so-called? So it's possible to click an element, but it's not that trivial because these gloves, they increase a clickable area dramatically. Or maybe old people with some problems with their hands, for example, motorics is not that good anymore, or maybe they feel some pain. So anyway, this can be a problem, and the key problem we need to solve here, we need to work with a clickable area. So here is our element, and I'm not sure how visible is this, but I highlighted clickable area with the pink color. So actually, in fact, clickable area is only these radio buttons, which is good if you use a mouse on the big screen, kind of okay, works for me, but it's not enough when this element is displayed in the mobile. Now we need to solve this problem. So first thing, what we can do, we can simply increase a size of a clickable area, this radio button. So now it's a little bit bigger and it's a little bit easier to click it, but it's not everything we're gonna do. Also, we can add labels to a clickable area. So now we can click labels and the value will be changed, and we already know how to do that. We can use a label HTML tag. And the last thing we can do, we can talk to our designers and ask them to increase visually clickable areas. So now it's possible to click somewhere around the item, and anyway it's gonna work. So this component will be much more convenient for people who are using small screens, for example. But clickable area is a bigger topic, and I would recommend you to learn some more information by reading a post which was posted recently, some months ago, by Ahmad Shadid. And in this blog post, he considers many elements and explains why it can be a problem, this clickable area problem, and he offers some solutions how to solve this problem. So really recommend you to check it out. And at the end of the presentation today, I will post these slides somewhere on Twitter. So just go to the either my Twitter account or dev Twitter and just find the slides. Let's go further and let's ask some more questions. What if users who use our interfaces cannot differentiate between different colors? In other words, they're color blind. So they can see things, but they cannot differentiate between different colors. And unfortunately, we give a lot of meaning to the colors, and sometimes it can be a problem. And if you think that this is not your problem, you're a little bit wrong again, because there are 300 million of people in the world. According to statistics, I would say this number is bigger, because not all these people are registered somehow. So millions and millions of people have this problem, so now we will check why this problem can be important for us. So this is a simple form. Subscription form contains two elements. You can enter your email here in the input field, and then you click a subscribe button. So now let's type some random text, and usually we don't send everything that user types to the server directly. We do some validation in the browser, and obviously it's not an email. So now I do validation on the blur event. So now when I click tab and focus will be moving to the button, validation will happen. And now we see that input border around an input and a label got red, and which is a signal for us that something is wrong with this input field. And we understand that because red color in the UX world means something dangerous or invalid, etc. But now let's imagine that we are colorblind people and we cannot see this color. I have written a small piece of code which makes all the colors in this page in the gray palette. So now let's turn on the so-called colorblind mode, and now let's try to understand what's the problem on this page. It looks exactly as empty field, and there is no way to understand if this form is valid or not. So now people who experience this problem will be disappointed a little bit with what to do. And when we are talking about color blindness and forms in particular, it's important to understand that form validation is a big topic, and we need to consider several things here. First of all, we need to make all the validation results accessible in three different ways. So first way is the color. We already did it. So usually red means danger, yellow means warning, green means success. And also we need to add descriptive text to describe the problem and possibly make some proposals how to fix this problem for the user. And also we can use icons to emphasize validation results. So now let's take a look what we can do. So here is the same form. I'm typing super random text, clicking tab, and here we go. Now we display the validation results in three different forms. And if I now click and activate a colorblind mode, it's still not gonna be possible to differentiate colors, but we don't need it anymore because we have text, not valid email, and we have X icon, which also means that something is wrong. So now, in a super simple way of adding some additional information to the validation form, we solve the problem for colorblind people. Let's go further. What if people who use our websites have a bad connection? Here you can say that, hey, why we should worry about the connection our users have? But look, what if we are creating a website and our potential users live somewhere in the Asian region? And historically and traditionally, Asian countries have super bad connection. I experienced and had some troubles personally, but probably you also know that this problem exists. And that's why it's important for us. We need to consider several things when we are talking about users' connection. We are making modern web applications with React, Angular, Vue, and other frameworks, and usually if our application is quite complicated, the size of our JavaScript bundle can be super big. And for us, with a good Wi-Fi, with nice devices, it's not a problem. But if people with a bad connection will try to load our website, they sometimes can experience some timeout issues. And in other words, they cannot access our website. And in some sense, this is also accessibility issue. Or you can imagine people with old and not that fast phones. So it also can be a problem to load some heavy pages. Another problem, last for today. What if our users are not that technically educated as we developers are? What if, for example, old people are using our interfaces and they don't want to? They kind of have to, for example, if they want to make an appointment in some of the institutions or send some documents to the banking or some, I don't know, other things that they kind of forced to do. They may be not familiar with how internet works, what internet is. They just need to do this simple task, and it's our job to make our experience as simple and as intuitive as possible. Another point of view, what if kids are using our interfaces? Would they understand the complicated technical terms or terms from politics, for example? Probably not, and if we want them to understand that, we need to make sure that our content in our website is quite simple or simple enough in order all people to understand it. Or maybe people with cognitive disabilities are our users, and we need to make sure in this situation that all the flows we want them to go in our website are simple, accessible, highlighted with the colors, animation, or whatever you can think about. So they need to understand what is this particular page about, and they need to understand how to do stuff on the web page. And I'm pretty sure this list is not the only, these problems are not the only problems we will have in the internet. I'm pretty sure if you analyze your projects you're working on, you will find more problems and more situations that you didn't even think about, but it's also related with our users, and I'm pretty sure you will find a way how to fix those problems. And at the end, let's talk a little bit about tools we can use in order to evaluate accessibility, in order to make our development process a little bit faster. So first tool, super simple. It's Lighthouse. Does anybody know what it does and what it is? A couple of people, which is a little bit sad because they shipped this tool, I guess, in the Chrome 59 or even earlier. Anyway, this tool allows you to, with one click, to do rough evaluation of accessibility on your website. This tool doesn't solve any problems. It tells you something, not everything, but enough to make sites somehow accessible. Really recommend you to check it out. Another tool is Xcore tool. It has some extensions for different browsers, but what makes this tool different from the previous one, extensions, for example, are based on Xcore library, which doesn't have any relationship with the browser. You can use it with any browser, even headless, and this makes it possible to include this evaluation, accessibility evaluation, in the pipeline, for example. And if your accessibility test in the pipeline fails, some developers who didn't think about accessibility will have to do that, so this is super nice. And another tool is Accessibility Insight, made by Microsoft team. It also does some evaluation and looks pretty similar like a previous tool, but there is one key difference here. The reports you can get from this tool looks super nice, and you can send them to your supervisors, to your managers, to your clients, etc. So it makes accessibility issue super visual. And some useful resources I would like to recommend you. If you don't know anything about accessibility but want to start thinking in this direction, please check out the video series on YouTube recorded by Rob Dodson from Google. Here he recorded several really nice and short videos about different accessibility aspects, different tools. For example, he gives overview of 3 most common screen readers and the switch control, etc. Really recommend you to check that resource. Also, Rob Dodson, together with Alex Boxhall, have recorded a nice online video course hosted on Udacity. Just go there, search for accessibility, probably is the only course there. You will find it easily, and this course is amazing. You will get more than enough information. It's recorded with a good quality, so it's nice. And the last resource I want to recommend you is a DQ organization. It's located in US, and their main focus is accessibility consulting, but they have super nice side project called DQ University. It's a set of different online courses about different aspects of accessibility, and if you want, for example, to prepare your website for accessibility tests like Section 543 or European Disability Act or something like that, this tool will definitely help you because it has many courses and you can learn stuff about accessibility. And the last thing, making web accessible is not that complicated. If you learn how to use React, Angular, and stuff like that, or React maybe it's quite simple, but let's say Docker. If you learn how to use Docker, this is 10 times simpler accessibility stuff. You need to do 3 things. You need to understand that this is a problem, and I hope after this presentation you will have some ideas that, hey, not everything is that simple. We need to think more about that. Then you need to learn something, and this resources I just mentioned is a nice start. There are many books, but you can Google them like super easily. And then you need to just start doing that on everyday basis. And believe me, millions and millions of people who are potentially your users will say a big thank you for you. And that's pretty much it for today. If you have some questions, I guess we have time, you'll have time to ask them, or just come to me. I will be staying somewhere around. And thank you very much.